Now, speaking of innovation, we're going to bring up our first guests.
Oh, fantastic.
Terrain co-founders, Ginger Ewing and Luke Baumgarten. Come on up, guys.
Ginger and Luke, come on up.
We all build this. We all build this. We all build this.
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for coming
Thanks
on.
for having us.
Thanks for this.
Yeah.
I just have a huge smile on my face. That's awesome.
It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy,
your
right?
lights are really bright.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Ooh, Sean, put up the thing so everybody can see how pretty it
Oh,
is
yes,
outside.
the
That's my
skyline.
favorite. Do the thing. You know, Sean's classic. Like,
Thing. Everyone knows the thing. It's like the worm, but it's the thing.
Yeah.
So, Terrain co-founders. Does everybody know Terrain? Obviously,
should.
yes. Right out of the gate, I guess. How did it get started? When did it get started?
Yeah, 10 years ago when there was nothing even close to as cool as Lilac City Live, we were young, relatively younger people in Spokane, and all of our friends were moving to other places because they said there was no community here, and enough people said that we were like, that's like totally enough to be a community. So we started thinking about what we could do, and what we came up with was the idea for this one-night art party.
Oh, okay.
It was like all of our creative and like talented and ambitious friends, sort of like, you know, the idea that like Spokane is a place and ambition goes to die. We're like, let's try to like change that narrative a little bit.
Get rid of that.
Yeah, and I was at the NAC as the curator for cultural literacy there. Luke was at the Inlander and had done a little bit of everything that mainly was writing about arts and culture. Patrick Kendrick was probably the largest independent music booker in town at the time.
For sure.
And then Sarah Honer, she has since moved to LA, and then Mariah McKay were kind of the original group who decided that this might be a good idea.
Yeah, and it has certainly been a good idea. It's just grown and grown. This year you had like a record number of...
Yeah, so we actually, we
Amazing.
started Terrain. It was supposed to be a one-night only, one-time thing. Fast forward 10 years. This year we had 467 artists submit. You were one of them.
I made the
He
cut.
will be a part of the show.
I made the cut.
I think you invited us on
And
the
I think
show.
it was 2039.
There's no way.
There's no good way,
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
In 2039, and so we have room for about 15% of that. So it's a really strong show. We define art really broadly, so it's music, it's performance art, it's theater, it's literary readings, it's a full musical lineup. It's a little bit of everything. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm really excited. I mean, I've been going for, I think, 6 years. I've been going, it's great. And like, I take my kids. It's super fun. It's great. And the space is awesome now that you're at the Jensen Bird building. It's really cool. And I love it. It's a great event for everybody to go to. But to talk to more about you guys, were you
Don't want to bore you too much.
growing up?
Yeah.
Did you plan on being?
Well, I wanted to be a doctor, I think. But then I was like, I had this like, I remember that I like, when most kids were like, I grew up in the country, and when like everybody was like out playing like Army Men or something, I like wrote my mom a report about George Washington when I was like in first grade. And I was like, are any of these facts right, Mom? She's like, I don't really know. So I think I always knew I was a writer. But
So you're going to be a historian or a doctor?
Yeah.
At 6 years old.
But it also could have been fiction, because it like might have been totally wrong. It could have been about a character named George Washington. Who
That would
knows?
be an amazing thing to find out. You're like, all right, time to
Find that
fact check
report.
little me.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Check out Luke's fan fiction of George Washington coming out soon.
It's amazing.
Gets a little racy around the middle, but it's
Okay.
like mostly PG-13.
Hard PG-13.
And Ginger,
Yeah,
what about
so-
you? Did you want to be?
Yeah, so I too had the ambitions of being a doctor or working in a donut shop. Was like my very early memory.
I like that.
Cheney, I
that.
grew up in Cheney. Cheney had this killer, I think it was like Daylight Donuts or something. Anyways, I wanted to work in a donut shop. Fast forward a little bit later, I went to school for forensic anthropology.
Oh.
I grew up on Unsolved Mysteries and Robert Stack.
Oh, yeah.
West
Yeah,
Side.
give it up. Keep it going.
That
Seriously.
song,
Oh, yeah.
the
Oh,
intro
yes,
song,
yes.
terrified me as a child.
Oh, it's so
I couldn't.
good.
I'm not,
Well, and you
I'm
never
not-
know when there's going to be a UFO or a ghost story
I
mixed
know.
in there, and you're just like, oh, it's Spokane.
No,
Yeah.
that's like, so it terrified you. It's like literally what she falls asleep. It's like a lullaby.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's horrific.
I still watch reruns of Unsolved
I
Mysteries.
just
Yep.
imagine they like
Yeah.
VHS tape with
Yes.
a masking tape on it.
Maybe you and I should talk later, because I know you have a
Yeah,
collection.
you have quite the collection.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
And then I just somehow, so long story short, I ended up at the museum, and it's
Right.
via the museum that I started to really fall in love with the arts community,
Yeah.
and realize all that they provide for Spokane.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Max, fantastic. Did you guys? When did you guys meet then?
So when I was at the Inland Air, so kind of like it took me a while to make this connection, but kind of before we started terrain, my colleagues and I, who are relatively young people in Spokane, working at the paper,
And now we're kind of
like relatively very old people.
fast forward to train at 11, and we are too old for this.
Yeah.
I'm sick.
Well,
My
it's like-
body hurts.
Yeah, she's sick.
But-
We were thinking about we used to hang the show ourselves and power through by just drinking beer until 3 in the morning and hanging it. And now it's I get a headache just looking at beer. Right. So it's kind of crazy. But so I was at the Inland and we're how can we sort of figure out who's young and actually not trying to leave Spokane or trying to do cool stuff in Spokane. And so we did this thing called 20 under 30, because a lot of magazines do 20 under 40, but it's what about the people that are doing cool stuff right out of college?
Sure,
or,
yeah.
Early 20s. So we did. It only ended up happening once. We hoped to make it an annual series, but we solicited all these nominations from everybody we could find, doctors, lawyers, who are your most young and promising colleagues and ambitious and cool, creative. And Ginger gets nominated. I won't name the colleague that co-edited the section with me, but we're going through the candidates, and I'm oh, this Ginger Ewing person seems pretty interesting, and Joel's
Oh, you just named him.
No,
You
sorry,
just
so
named
Joel
him.
Smith, former web editor of the Inland Air.
We'll edit that out for the
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah.
show.
He's actually in witness relocation now. So. No, yeah, sorry, Joel. I think the mafia's going to be after him now. So he's nah, I don't know if this is right. I'm no, she looks really good. Let's take a second look. And we'd given each other a passion vote and a veto.
A hard veto.
Yeah, and so he's I don't know, man. I'm not feeling it. I'm no, I think she could be good. I think she's good. She was doing work with the local area tribes. It's just a really interesting story. And he's how would you, maybe use my veto on her? And I'm well, if you use your veto, then I'll use my passion vote. And he's fine. Well, you have to interview her. I'm fine, I will interview her. And so that was the beginning. And then
Just think Joel and I could have been married.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we, basically 4 out of the 5 people that ended up starting terrain were I helped write this section, and then the other 3 of us were included in it. And then, so that was actually one of the first events that the Inlander actually did, was this little meet and greet with all this 20 under 30, and then that sparked the conversation that ultimately a few months down the road led to terrain. So it's kind of a fun story.
Love blossomed from art. Yeah?
It did, and I was, 2 or 3 months into our relationship, and I'm just all over him and can't get enough of him and fantasizing someday. By the way, we're married. I don't know if that was clear. Okay, yeah. So Train also for a marriage, and is that weird? And about 3 months into our relationship, fantasizing about telling our kids how mom and dad met, and I was how did you and Adrian meet? He's I interviewed her for a story. So.
Are there any journalists in the audience? No? Okay, all you do is work. So I was I met all of my friends, most of my enemies,
Right.
and now my wife, working. I was writing all day long.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. Sorry, that's not a more romantic story.
Yeah, so that's how
Really making it romantic.
Yeah, it's great. But speaking of the event bearing a child, I was actually thinking the other day that we're now that we're at 11, and it feels kind of Train does feel like our child. It's we could just start theming our terrains after is it 12 or 13? It's that would be the bat mitzvah
Right,
terrain.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
the Sweet 16.
yeah,
yeah.
we could do a
Quinceañera.
quinceañera
Oh,
terrain.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's babies growing up.
Oh, that'd
Yeah.
be great. That'd be fun. Should we try his mic again? Is
Can
that
you
ready?
guys hear me all right? I'll try it.
Let's try.
Checking.
Is that better?
Yep.
Am I back on?
I think we
Cool.
got
All
you.
right, we got it.
Now, do either of you do art yourselves? Do you have any?
I'm a writer. I do some fiction in addition to the
You George
journalism and
Washington
essay.
stuff, right?
Yeah, it's it's a whole cycle. It's unpublished yet, so if you know anybody, if agents in the audience get at me, it's
Over
this whole cycle.
4,000
Yeah,
pages.
Yeah. It's called George Washington
8 chapters on
Sasquatch
wooden teeth.
Slayer.
Oh,
So it's this alternate history where George Washington ended up in the Northwest.
right.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I like it. I think
Sherman Shields, you could get to.
I know,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I'm
no.
saying. Hit her up.
yeah.
No, I consider myself an arts organizer. I have a really good eye, but I'm not.
Nothing really. Have you ever like tried your hand at it or anything? Like any type of medium?
I'm a creative person, but I don't identify as an artist.
Oh, okay.
So-
Interesting. What about any weird things ever happen at a terrain where it was like last
God.
minute disaster, like or
Well, yeah.
save a pull through?
So Terrain 6, which was ended up being our last year in the Music City building, which is like where First Avenue Coffee is now. So we've always done this event in like raw spaces, and that particular space was like the rawest possible space. Like it still technically had the boilers that used to heat it, but they were like
yeah.
disconnected from the pipes and like sitting up against a wall. There was barely any electricity and certainly no running water. Lots of living and dead pigeons. It had like the whole pigeon life cycle in like various floors of the building. And we've been in this space for 3 or 4 years, and we've gotten a ton of press. We've sort of one of the tough things that's tough as a young person that like when you want to start something, you don't always know like all the permits to get and everything. But we'd like by year 6, we felt like we'd figured out the permitting process. We had a good relationship with the city. The mayor's office had bailed us out once on our liquor license application. So like we were like, people know us. We're not hiding.
Right.
And then we're literally a week and a half out from Terrain 6, and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, and I pick it up, and it's one of our local fire marshals. And he's like, Luke Baumgarten. I'm like, yeah. He's like, are you affiliated with a group called Terrain? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, Luke, I'm looking at your application here. And then I never heard of you before, so I went and did a little digging on the internet, and it says this spokesman article MC says you get 1,000 people in the event, and by that time we're getting like 5,000 people to our event. So I'm like, yes, exactly 1,000 people, sir. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't sound good. Like, yes, certainly no more than 1,000 people, but yeah, about 1,000 people. He's like, huh, in that building? And he's like, he gives me the address of the building. I'm like, yeah, that building. He's like, last time we went through that building, and he like lists off all the reasons that it's like it's like it's basically like a fire pit waiting to happen. And I'm like, he's like, what? Like what? I don't understand. And it's like he almost just like can't make words. He's so like confused by it. I'm like,
I just imagine like a cartoon character of a fire marshal.
well, that's because I'm on the phone. So like that's exactly what I'm imagining.
Smoke coming out of his ears.
It's a mix of like just complete disbelief, but also indignation. It's like, how did this possibly happen? Yeah. And so I'm like, well, man, I mean, I'm sorry. It's not like we're hiding from anybody. We put in all of our permits, I think, the right way.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, but, and I'm like, can we sit down? Like, let's get together and let's figure this out. And luckily,
Reel it back a little.
Like, thank God we had just formed our board, and we had just so happened to have asked Ben Stuckert, our city council president, to be on our board. And so we're like, Ben, I know this is like the second phone call I'm making to you after asking you to be on our board, but I think we might have a problem here. And so
We need you immediately.
We all meet, and the fire, and this is one of the, I mean, this is it's kind of like a potentially tragic story, but it actually also illustrates what an amazing place Spokane is, because like, I don't think this would have gone off in any other city, but the fire marshals were like, okay, cool, well, they basically made us like hire them as like human fire alarms.
That's amazing.
They were not cheap.
No, they were pretty expensive fire alarms, but like they rolled with it, and then like after we had been sort of like he had to play bad cop because he's a fire marshal, it's his job. But then like after we had like sort of like figured out a plan, he was like, the day I was meeting with you guys, I asked my son if he'd ever heard of Terrain, and the only thing he said was, Dad, don't close down Terrain.
For the love of
for the love of God, Dad, don't close down Terrain. So I was like, oh, so you were kind of just playing like the bad cop. He's like, well, I mean, I have to, but then like they gave us, that was like the first time we ever had a capacity issue. Like we were issued a capacity. Like, this is how many people you can have. It's all these like great things that
And this was the 6th one?
This was number 6.
Well, and another important key to that is Ben rallied the troops, and so Marcus Riccelli and Andy Villa came down, and they were our clickers for the capacity.
Make sure you got that.
So we had like legislators and city council people.
People, and then by the end of the night, the fire marshal we hired to be there by the headlining band was like taking video on his camera, and like came over and thanked us for what we do for the community.
Cool.
So
That's amazing.
I was like, we felt like we needed like authority figures to work the door because we weren't always like the incredible professional people you see.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, we needed Speaking
of professional people, like we all know that you guys do terrain and a lot of like advocation stuff for Spokane and the arts and stuff, but like, what are your real day jobs?
Train is her real day
Yeah,
job, actually.
so Terrain has grown to the point, so we are more than just our flagship event. We now have 3 flagship events, and we have a gallery space and a performance arts space and a retail storefront and a professional development program for artists.
Oh,
And so we have been doing all of this
Can you guys tell that it's her job to tell people what we do?
We've been doing this all volunteer up until about a year and a half ago. And a year and a half ago, we were able to hire our first 2 employees, and I was one of them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So Train
Yeah.
is now my full-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Back up. I think it's real.
Sorry.
There it goes.
So dreams do come true, kids.
Yeah. And what about you?
Oh, so I started weird story. So I left the Inlander because, as you may have heard, journalism doesn't pay the bills very well. So I went into advertising for a couple years, and being a writer at a digital advertising agency is like that scene in Office Space where the people are like, so Bob, what would you say you do here? And then the main character is like, well, I do 15 minutes of real actual work. It was like really, like writing advertising copy was just such a departure from like what the work that I did as a journalist, writing like, 5 stories and 10,000 words a week or whatever. And so I was like, I got all this free time. So that was actually when I really was able to like spend a significant amount of time focusing on Terrain. But then I was like, well, I don't think I want to be in advertising forever. I don't know if I'll be able to go back to journalism.
And your wife was like, are you sure about that? Because it pays pretty
It
well.
did pay like considerably better, but it was like, so it was like, if I'm going to be a writer, if I'm going to be a freelancer, if maybe I'll like freelance, whatever. I didn't know. It was like, I had written a story about co-working, so I was like, maybe I'll start a co-working space, and like,
Well, that's also a disaster story, because Terrain 6
That same
also
year?
that same year
was the year I signed the lease on the co-working
he
space.
disappears for a couple of hours, and I'm like, where the hell is Luke? And he comes back, he's like, oh, I just signed the lease on a co-working space.
And Ginger was like, you were thinking about you're opening a co-working space?
Without any consultation.
We have really good communication.
Yeah, super good communication.
But so I do that partially, and then after I left I took a job as the interim ED of Spokane Arts a couple years ago, and so left the advertising gig to do that, and then after that was over, I started my own agency. So I have a small creative firm in town.
Well, that's terrific.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, obviously Terrain has just grown and grown and grown and become this huge thing. Is there anything that would like make you guys stop doing Terrain?
Besides a massive heart
I know,
attack.
that was going to be my answer.
I know the
besides
pressure
dying by
like
age
grows
45.
and grows
Yeah.
each year. I'm sure.
I shouldn't joke about that, knock on wood.
Yeah.
No, I think that Terrain, I mean, obviously we hope that it gets to a point someday that we can walk away and the organization carries
over
on.
to-
And we are actually in the process, Jackie Caro is our operations director, she's amazing, and she's taken on a bulk of who the organization is now. Our goal though is that we always want to be responsive to the community and what we hear the community says that they need. And so Terrain might evolve into kind of different arms, but I hope 50 years from now, we're still around, or 100
Absolutely.
years from now. I
Yeah.
hope we become a legacy institution.
I think we all do, right?
So,
Woo! Fantastic.
yeah.
That's great. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on. We have one of our writers, Riley Connors. He,
yes.
I know he missed the submission deadline, but
Okay.
he has. I think he's a talented young guy, and he has.
He's got
Yes,
ideas.
I love it.
He has a pitch for you, and he's
was like,
hoping he
"Don't
can
be
kind
too
of
afraid."
make
Yeah.
it. And he kind of broke my arm to get a shot.
Yes,
you know,
All right,
so-
yeah.
I love
We
it.
told him to give him
Come
a few
on.
Riley
minutes to
Connors,
finish
your
this,
shot,
so-
Riley.
Yes.
Shoot your shot, Riley.
Hey, buddy. All right, good luck, man. Thanks. Yeah, go have a seat here. Yeah.
So, you said you had an eye for art,
Yes.
Yeah.
and you jack of all trades, I guess.
Yeah.
So, if we could have slides on in the back that could show the art for everybody who's sitting in the third or fourth row. This is the first piece of art that I did.
What's that say on there?
It says Papa. Papa. But the actual, well, that's not the actual title.
Oh, is it Untitled?
No,
or-
no, it's Waka Waka. Like that song.
Oh.
So I did this in acrylics.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
like-
it's mixed media.
it looks like a mon-
yeah.
yeah.
What does it look like?
It's
Well,
mixed media.
Yeah. Mixed media and collage. Mixed
Yeah.
media collage.
Yeah.
Well, I painted
On
this all
acrylic.
by hand.
Oh, so that's a realist.
Photorealistic
Yeah,
So,
little
I mean, you
capabilities.
can hold it if you want.
I
Don't
would love to hold
don't
it.
smell it. Don't smell it.
I
The
fell for
background,
that.
that's-
Wasn't worth
The
it.
background, I did the red background in my blood, so you don't want to be touching that. Okay, so we got that up there, and second piece.
Okay,
Oh.
do you want to hold?
Yeah.
So they can
Second piece is this. Did this in watercolor.
Okay. Yeah, that's like some really good
Yeah, I can
definition
tell,
for
yeah.
watercolor. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
did it in my basement, got tired of huffing paint fumes, and just decided, let's go with it. So this is, as you can see, the mask, because we all wear masks in our lives.
Right. It's a metaphor.
I remember that line
This
in
is,
the movie.
this is metaphorical. Yeah.
I think I'm winning you over. All right, so I'll hand this one to you guys. No, okay, I had a weird question. Did you decide that you didn't want to be a doctor because you realized cows aren't humans living out in the country?
So funny thing, you're making a joke, but the deadly serious reality is I did grow up in the country, and I am the most allergic to cow saliva my allergist has ever
How do you
met.
even
In the
find that
his,
out?
His entire 30 because I got licked by a cow and
my.
broke out so horrifically that I went in for an allergy test because I had seasonal allergies.
That's the most adorable affliction I've
Isn't
ever
it? Yeah. It's like getting licked by a cow,
Oh,
right?
my God, that sounds like your problem.
Yeah, no, really.
All right, so, yeah. What do you think? You think I got a shot?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean-
let's. So one thing that we didn't mention is that Train is a juried event. So I think what we should do is ask the audience, and we'll kind
Oh,
of.
well,
you
let's
know.
what do you
let's
think?
give
You
him
got
this
one more
last
piece,
one.
right?
We got one more piece.
Because I
Final-
think this one's gonna hammer it home. Let's flip to the next slide. So I did this one in markers.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a quote. This is, as you know, the mayor was on the show a couple weeks ago, and we actually became really good friends. And you'd be, yeah, anytime he talks about clean rivers,
Yeah.
that's actually my stage name. So he and I became really good friends, and we were down in Sandpoint, him and I. And you'd be surprised what a hot tub and mojitos brings out in a person. And
The
so
truth.
it says, it's like one of those corny quote posters, but
Right.
it says, Riley Connors is my best friend. He's a really cool, super handsome dude.
Aw,
Yeah, I know.
sweet.
It's really nice.
It was
Yeah.
really weird when he said that to me, because his
How
wife,
many mojitos in?
not enough.
No.
So,
lose
and that's
count.
from Mayor David D. Bones Condon, 2018.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, and so,
Is that a piece that's pretty personal? Do you want to let go of that?
well,
So, I mean, the art's for sale. So, I mean, what
it
happens
is
if
for
somebody buys
sale.
it?
I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. The other ones, okay, so the first one, if anybody's interested, is $800.
Oh, that's really reasonable.
Well, it's my rent. And
Sure.
the second one is it's like whatever. It's like $75.
Yeah, whatever. Honestly, what do you have on you? He'll take it.
I
It's
don't
not
Did you
big.
price it by the amount of money you would have gotten for the plasma out of the blood that you used to paint it?
Ooh.
So I
about
really
2 pints
also would
here?
encourage you to go through our professional development program because it'll help you price your pieces.
She's so good at
but,
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good. Because this is just a handsome kiss.
Oh.
A handsome movie kiss.
With, you mean? Is that what you're saying? A handsome kiss?
Do I have any volunteers?
Justin?
Do you want to give me a handsome movie kiss?
Yes, do it.
All right, come on down.
Dip him. Dip him.
Come on down.
Just like the movies, folks.
Come on down.
Boy.
All right, let me do this.
Take the glasses off.
All right.
Yeah.
Aw.
Dude. Yeah?
Second one, round 2.
Yeah, take 2.
All right, come on.
I like the lean in, but the pull back.
The lean in and the pull back, yeah.
What flavor gum are you chewing?
Riley flavored.
Oh, I guess now. Yeah, so professional development program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that you have a future. So.
Do you really?
I do. Yeah.
So can I get my art in this year's terrain?
No.
Riley
Sorry.
Connors.
Worth a shot. Worth a
I'm a
shot.
rules girl.
Worth a shot.
All right.
Yeah.
You made your first sale, buddy.
Pleasure meeting you
Thanks,
both.
Riley.
Thanks for nothing.
Made your first sale, buddy.
Yeah, he can keep it.
Hey, Riley Connors, an artist, everybody. Thank you. Before I have you go, I know you're on this board as well. They wanted me to mention that the Spokane Arts Annual Arts Awards is on Saturday, September 29th at the Montvale Event Center. featuring live music, poetry, visual art, food, drinks, and the award presentation. The event is the kickoff for Arts Month, all of October, a month-long celebration of local arts and culture, beginning with the Fall Arts Tour and the first week of October.
Yay.
You can visit at SpokaneArts.org.
Yes.
And then, so Train is the 4th and the 5th. So if those crazy crowds that we talked about don't appeal to you on the Friday night, that's a free event. One of the things is like we've decided that like access and equity to art is like something that's like a core value of ours. So that event will always be free, but a lot of people come to it. So we started doing a ticketed night the night before. So if you want to come with a chiller atmosphere on Thursday, and you can find out all about that on trainspokane.com.
Terrific.
Also, just one more thing. I know that we have several Train 11 artists in the crowd. If you could just stand up.
Yeah, you wanna stand up?
Anyone want to stand
two
up?
artists.
And
You're an artist. You're an artist. You're an artist. You're all artists.
come see and support them.
Yeah, come see him October
4th and 5th.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't stand up.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
You know, I want to toot my own horn. I have a pretty dope piece in there, though. Really
Pretty
excited.
rad. Pretty rad.
I made the cut, 15%. But thanks so much for
Awesome.
coming on,
Thanks for
guys.
having
Please
us.
come out to Terrain. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ginger. Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, man.
Thanks a lot.